Good evening and good morning. Welcome to the Bee Formless Flow Driven CEO podcast. And I'm super excited because today I have on the show Shannon Schwartz. And Shannon, I've already forgotten where you are based again. Oops, sorry about that. Where are you based again?
Metro Detroit in the United States, in the
That's
state of
right, Metro
Michigan.
Detroit in the United States. It's like 5 in the morning for you. It's end of the day for me, and you're probably, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, and I'm, just starting to slow down, get into active recovery. So forgive me for forgetting that Detroit. But anyway, enough about, forgetting things. Shannon, I'm super excited because we have so much to talk about today. But what I'd love to do is you are quite an incredible woman. You're like juggling many different hats, an amazing mother of five children, a beautiful partner, it sounds like, who also is keeping for your husband's business by doing obsessive compulsive detailing. So it probably says a lot about how obsessive and compulsive he is around detail. So it probably keeps you on your toes. Plus, you've
Yes.
also got two other businesses and you've also just completed your degree. Congratulations. So
Thank you so much.
so tell us now. I'm going to hand it over to you because I've just kind of reeled off a few different things here, but let's just get into start wherever you want to start. But I'm keen to hear it all, and I'm sure the community is. So I'll hand it over to you.
Oh, well, thank you, B. I guess I would start with where we started. OCD, obsessive compulsive detailing, was about 11 years ago. And it became an organic grow out of my husband was detailing for another company and wanted to run his own business. So we started because we actually had a car accident and made enough money off of the vehicle that that's what we used to start the business.
Wow.
And when we started, it was everything we could fit in the back of our Trailblazer. And within 6 months, I had quit my full-time job to go working with him and was detailing vehicles as well. Um, and then we ended up getting a trailer, so we made it a mobile shop on wheels. We used that for about maybe a year while I was pregnant with our now 8-year-old. And we were even power washing vehicles in the middle of winter just because we wanted to be able to get into a shop. And we got into our first shop. And that's when I started our marketing campaign because we all of a sudden had a shop and we needed to have cars to stock it.
Goodness.
So I had a telemarketing background and I ended up using that to cold call dealerships and got us some contracts and built our webpage because we didn't have anybody to be able to do it for us. We didn't have the funds for it. So I had to teach myself webpage design and SEO. And then as we grew, we ended up in another 3,000 square foot shop. And over time, we then decided to go back to being mobile because it was just easier. At that point, we had had 5 children total, the two youngest with special needs, and I needed to be home more often. So while I was pregnant with our youngest, I decided, since I had to do our taxes, to get certified to do taxes overall. And that's when Schwartz Tax Solutions came about. We had plenty of people that would come in that were vendors and fellow detailers, and they were like, I can't keep my books. I don't know how your wife does it. So I ended up starting doing bookkeeping for other people and doing their taxes as well. And over time, I had COVID happen, and there was a program called the Reconnect Grant through the state of Michigan that if you did not have your first college degree, they would pay for it for you.
Mhm.
So I took that opportunity to go back to school and finish my degree, which just happened this last May. Um, while I was doing the degree, I got a job in public accounting. And I loved it. It was great. It was with an international firm. But public accounting can be grinding. It can be grueling. You
Mhm.
have busy season after busy season because there's tax deferrals for people to file their taxes. And then all of a sudden you have to do all those in October when you would have been doing them all in April.
Mhm.
I worked in the bookkeeping department and there was no slow season. It was always constant. I had about 24 clients. And over time, it just got to be too much with my kids. They needed their mom at home. So I ended up going into private accounting for 6 months in cannabis, of all things.
Wow.
And that is a learning curve because a lot of people don't realize with cannabis, you can't deduct all your normal general and administrative expenses. You can only deduct your cost of goods sold. So you're paying a lot higher tax rate,
Mhm.
at least in the United States. I'm not sure how it is internationally. I did that for about 5, 6 months. And again, it got to the point that I just needed to be home more. So I needed to find a job that would allow me to be home while also working at the same time and supporting my husband's ongoing detailing business. And that's when I discovered insurance. And while I was working insurance is when I found out that there was a lot of special needs people that can't get coverage. So their parents have to get tons of coverage. And when I say tons of coverage, they have to plan for 20 years of expenses after they pass for their child to have enough money to survive. So that's what my passion is now. That's what I do now is the insurance. I still do consulting. I still do bookkeeping and invoicing for different companies, collections of accounts receivable. I still keep the books and do the taxes for OCD, along with a couple other little things to help my husband out. But primarily my passion is insurance and helping special needs families plan ahead.
You're amazing. And what's that company called? The one that yours like is
Missing Piece Insurance Agency.
Missing Piece Insurance Agency. How do you guys come up with this like amazing name? Everyone I'm talking to on the pod, obviously my background, brand, advertising, communications. I love understanding the story behind the name. And it sounds like that every name your for all the three businesses has a story behind it. And even like from obsessive compulsive to your missing pieces, like it's fascinating. Is that kind of like they're obviously from lived experiences? Is that right? Like in terms of how you've come up with these names of
Well, my
business?
husband came up with the name for the detailing business, and honestly, it fits because you want somebody that's a little OCD cleaning your car,
100%. My
especially when it's
dad.
your personal vehicle.
Yeah, like my dad says to me yesterday, and he's got it big time. He's like, well, it's the day before over Easter. He's like, your car's dirty. And I'm like, I had it washed last week. And if he didn't say it to me once, he said it to me about 5 times. It was like so OCD. And I'm like, Dad, we'll just leave it for next week. He goes, no, it needs to be washed. I'm like, no, it just needs to wait.
But yeah, he actually helped me come up with the name for my company for the insurance business for Missing Piece, and it's PEACE for peace of mind.
Love
Um,
that. Oh my gosh.
And it is because it is the piece that you need to be able to plan ahead for your children for when you're gone,
Yeah.
and it gives you that some of that peace of mind that at least the finances are taken care of.
Yeah.
There's much more that goes into special needs planning besides just the insurance and the financing. There's actually making sure that you have a plan for your child that whoever takes over their caregiving knows all the idiosyncrasies and the ins and outs, that maybe your kid only likes their strawberries cut in halves and not quarters. Simple little things like that that you do every day that you don't think about, that when you're gone, somebody else has to know so they can take care of your child.
And do you help people with that? Like, do you give them that sort of advice? Like, we were talking, and I have so many questions for you and so much you've just shared with us, but we'll just unpack as much as we can in the time we have. But in terms of just, we were talking just quickly before the start of the pod and around this transactional versus relational relationships, right? And I was talking to you about, the need to, especially when it comes to insurance or tax, even your car, like let's face it, there's just this real need for you don't want a transactional relationship because especially, missing pieces, you're dealing with children, you're dealing with your people, like their unconditional love. Like you don't want someone helping you with insurance that is just treating you like a complete transaction. I mean, I can't stand it personally. Like it sounds like you lead from the heart and everything, like what you was just talking about then. Like that obviously plays a big role in what you're doing. And is that what attract like you attract those sorts of people that are looking for more than just that transaction as well in terms of clients?
That's what the goal is primarily. I work with everybody and I do get emotionally involved with my clients because everybody has a different story, everybody has a different background. Even if they don't have a special needs child, they still have people that they're planning for when they're gone to make sure that things are okay.
Mm.
And they don't always understand how much money they really need. And sometimes, in the case of somebody who has really bad health, the only thing you can give your family is the gift of time to make decisions. You may not be able to give them a financial windfall, but you can at least give them 5 to 6 months before they have to worry about selling the house and downsizing and things like that. So to me, it is not transactional. It's very emotionally involved because you have to get to their story and their why as to why they need this to begin with.
Mm. Yeah. So that I guess that takes me to my next question for you in terms of, I guess for me, what did you study? Like like you've got this real desire to help people. You've lived experience, but what was your degree that you actually studied in?
Accounting.
I mean, yeah.
Yep.
And did you from that very moment, like, was it this kind of desire always to like lead clearly from the heart? I mentioned that before, but have you always had that human-centered like style in terms of the way you've always operated? Like, obviously, like let's separate, family life to work life 1 second. Have you always operated from that way? Like what kind of, or has that,
Yeah.
yeah.
Even when I was in public accounting, I really cared about my clients. I liked their individual stories, how they started their companies, how they came about. I was lucky enough to work with a couple of startups that had literally, they were in the process of forming the company and they knew they needed an accountant, but they didn't quite know where they were going or what they wanted to accomplish. And knowing their story helped me structure their statement so that I could tell them things that would draw more attention to certain aspects for a startup that are more important than for an established business.
Yeah, fascinating. Fascinating. Sounds so fascinating. How do you juggle it all? How do you manage, like, if you're connecting from a real emotional, you know, um from the heart, for example, and I wear my heart on my sleeve, and I'm very similar in terms of like you connect, right? It's a superpower if you ask me. Like it sounds like you've got that amazing superpower as well. But how do you also then be able to switch off and like, you've got a lot going on. You've got 5 children, three with special needs. There's a lot while running 3 businesses. How do you keep your own cup full?
I spend a lot of time with my kids and they are very restorative to me. My youngest especially has a very wicked sense of humor. And when things get really dark, if I have a client that some people are uninsurable, and you have that client that's trying to set up something for their family, and it breaks my heart because there's only so much that I can do. So for them, I do have moments where I break down because I feel bad about what's going on with them. But I look to my kids and I know that everything that I'm doing is because I'm trying to set something up for them. Part of insurance, obviously, I make money off doing this. You get a commission off of the insurance sales, but you also get residuals for when people constantly renew their policies. And it's that residual income that lasts as a legacy for my children that will be their income that even when I pass, if the client is still paying that policy, my children get something from
So you're always thinking about everybody else. You're putting your children first, putting everyone else first, which is such a gift in itself in terms of the way you look after your children as well. Do you get creative inspiration from playing with your children and almost kind of getting into like that flow state where you kind of lose track of time? Like do you quite often get into a place with your children where you might have something on your mind with work, for example, or a really challenging project on the go, or a client where you're working on a big insurance gosh, sorry, I can't think of the language, but project or policy or whatever. And you need to kind of switch off because you can't solve that problem quite immediately. Do you find that quite often when you then go and disconnect from work and you go and hang out with the kids and get the inspiration and the wicked sense of humor, do you then find when you go back to into the project you're working on that sometimes the solutions come a lot faster for you? Like, have you noticed a connection there at all?
Oh, yes, it definitely helps to step away sometimes and look at things from a different perspective. Sometimes it can be simple as me thinking to myself, they have what they call insurers of last resort that are guaranteed insurance that, for a lot of people, it's going to be financially hard and difficult to come up with that amount of money because of their conditions. But if they are determined that that's what they want to do, there is something out there, some final expense policy, something for them. So it's just sometimes you need to step away from it to be able to brainstorm about it, to be able to come back to it again.
I love that. I love the ability to be able to do that because kind of when you just push, 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 there's just you don't get that. You don't get the results you're looking for. So tell me, lifelong learner. So have you always been one of these lifelong learners? Like in terms of it sounds like you master something. So you've mastered marketing because you needed to learn how to do marketing and SEO. You've mastered accounting, you've mastered insurance. Like, what's your whole philosophy on being a lifelong learner?
It was actually something that was set up by my grandfather. He never went beyond third grade, but he taught himself everything. He was a welder, he was an electrician, and an auto mechanic. And he had to teach himself all of those things. And even when he was in his late 60s suffering from cancer, he was studying physics because he wanted to learn about it.
Wow.
And that inspired me because it's like he said, you never stop learning. He goes, when you stop learning is actually the day that you die.
I so believe that. And do you integrate that in kids as well? Like in terms of like even, like a special needs perspective, like do you doing brain with them? Like you're always like helping them learn or getting them to kind of like be curious, open-minded.
I actually homeschool the two youngest because our 8-year-old is nonverbal and severely autistic. Cognitively, he's only about 2 to 3 years old. So it's a lot of repetition with him. Our 6-year-old is homeschooled and starting kindergarten. And he has a couple different learning disabilities, including dyslexia. So we're just figuring those things out for him now. It's making me having to learn at things differently. Plus, he's a lefty, so having to teach him how to write when I'm a righty is a little
I'm
bit of
a
a
righty
challenge.
too.
So everything he does is with his left hand. So I find that if I show him by writing it upside down where it's facing him, he sees it better because it comes from the left hand perspective almost. Um, and that seems to help him figure out how to do it because that's been the biggest challenge for me. I'm like, I'm not a teacher. I've had no teaching classes. I have no background in that, but I have to teach them
Yeah,
because,
but
I can't trust anybody with my nonverbal child. He can't tell me if something's wrong.
yeah.
So, I have to school him. And since I'm schooling him, I might as well do the youngest one at the same time.
Yeah. Oh my God, you're so amazing. And like, tell me, you've also like we haven't tapped into this where you're from the insurance, like with from peace of mind. You mentioned earlier about this animal rescue and the, autism and how you give back as well. Can you just give us elaborate a little bit on that in terms of, what you're doing as part of your business as well with that?
Yes, that is actually with obsessive compulsive detailing,
Sorry,
my
that's
husband's auto detailing business. It's something that we wanted to do for quite some time, and it's something that we just rolled out. That there is a special place called the Play Place and Autism Special Needs Center that is in Sterling Heights, Michigan. And we give a portion of our proceeds to them. And then we also give a portion of our proceeds to an animal rescue group because it's just two things that we're very passionate about. We're actually vegan. So we love animals and we don't feel like any animal should be slaughtered for food. So for us to be able to give back to an animal rescue means a lot to us.
yeah, quite amazing. I should have showed you my puppy before. He's like they mean that they bring such joy. Animals just bring such joy. They also like the flow state perspective as well. I'm actually just kind of in awe of you in terms of everything that you're talking about and everything that you're doing and still coming back to this space and places. Do you ever make time for like do you ever have time for yourself? Do you ever just stop and like how do you do it? Like what's your without giving away all these secrets, what is your how do you keep going? How you've had extreme adversity, you're juggling so much. Like what is it that you tap into? What keeps you going and how do you also fill yourself back up?
I take 15 minutes every day to myself. I set an alarm for it. I have to have alarms for everything. Um, but I set an alarm for it in the evening around 8:45. I take 15 minutes to myself that I either meditate or I'll read a book or I'll do something that's just for me.
Love that.
And I find that that 15-minute window is quite restorative. You would think that 15 minutes isn't that long. And at first, I had a hard time taking that 15 minutes, but taking that time really helps me. Even if I just sit there and just think about download through the day, what happened, what I need to do, what I need to work on the next day, it's very meditative and helpful to me to have that 15-minute window.
I call it power up and power down, right? And I do this a lot, and I've got it as well in like in my diary in terms of I'm pretty scheduled too, like you other sorts of things, but obviously very different. But I have a power up in the morning, so like first in the morning I'll get up and it's like not looking at certain things and just like it's like a bit of me time or going for a walk or taking my dog to the local cafe, whatever. But then there's the power down piece as well. And it sounds like, that's like for you, that's a really important part because it's a chance to reflect on your day, like you say, but also then go, all right, what do I need to strategize and focus on for the next day? Which then gets you back into those, what I call the high value tasks, so that you're kind of, because you must you must be like clockwork with your schedule in terms of like your blocked out times. And so it'll be like Tetris probably for you in terms of strategizing your day. And everything would be like ordered, right? Am I right in that regard?
Yes, because along with doing the bookkeeping and the taxes for the OCD business, I also basically act as a porter, getting vehicles back and forth, along with making sure invoicing's done. So a lot of it is tapping in with my husband's schedule of, okay, I see this car's here. Is this going back to a dealership or is this going back to a client? So that I know what I'm doing the next day.
Gosh. And do you work on weekends as well?
Yes, I do, because I have a lot of clients that work 9 to 5 during the week. And when they get home at night, they need that time for their children. They don't have time to talk about insurance. They have time Saturday afternoon at 3 o'clock. So I make time at Saturday afternoon at 3 o'clock. Um, I'll block out time for my kids. I'll block out time for doctor's appointments, those types of things. But otherwise, I try to keep everything as open as possible because I don't know what's going to happen from one minute to the next to be able to plug something in.
I love that because that's also around you. As much as you are organized, there's also this element of being flexible and adaptable and non-linear, right? Because the world, like as we all know, like the world is complex, it's chaotic, it's ambiguous, it's uncertain. But the fact that you are able to also maneuver your way around having this flexibility and freedom is quite remarkable. And so what's your view on that in terms of like being like operating in a not in a linear way versus a non-linear way? Like are you all about being non-linear and being able to maneuver things as and when you need to?
Um, it's kind of a combination of both, especially when it comes to my autistic child. They thrive on routine.
Mm-hmm.
I have a 22-year-old that's also autistic, but he's very high functioning. He works a job, pays all of his own bills. Um, so it's mainly the focus is on the 8-year-old and the 6-year-old. And with the 8-year-old, thrives on routine. So you have to have certain things that go in certain orders. You have to prepare him before things change, because otherwise it can cause behaviors and meltdowns that are completely out of his control.
Yeah.
He's just responding to his environment and the stimuli that are there.
Yeah.
So it's on us to make sure that we keep the environment as linear as possible for him to
Yeah.
reduce those stresses.
Yeah, so it sounds like there's an element of linear when it needs to be, but then the rest around it can be quite non-linear when it needs to be as well.
Yes, I refer to it as organized chaos.
So do I. I was having this conversation before with somebody and we were chatting away and we were talking about, he was calling it something else. And I'm like, it's just organized chaos. And he was like, I said, like, I can sometimes look a bit chaotic, a bit crazy. And probably people, when you tell them about like what you've got going on, they probably go, what? Like, how do you do all that? That just sounds chaotic. But if you're organized, I think that's the way to be. Organized chaos. Like, we're in a world where it is chaotic and complex. So, how do you handle it and organize? I call it organizing yourself around the chaos. And it sounds like exactly what you're doing too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tell me, what do you see as the biggest challenge or opportunity in terms of in terms of the missing pieces business right now? Like, what do you see as like the biggest? I'll say opportunity because I hate using the negative of the challenge, but yeah, what do you see as the biggest opportunity in that business for you?
The biggest thing for me is finding as many special needs family as possible because even though I sell insurance to everybody, that is my main focus is the special needs community. Because I don't feel that there's enough attention there. I don't feel that there's enough planning there. I feel that on my own end as a parent of special needs children, there's a lot of anxiety and angst over what's going to happen in the future that I want to help as many people as possible. So getting the word out is the big thing that, you do have to plan ahead of time for your children. It is possible to at least get those financial pieces in place. It's also possible to get the other pieces in place, like what your children like and don't like, and having those things together makes it easier for you to sleep at night because otherwise you're up at night worrying about your kids, what's going to happen when something happens to me.
Yeah.
And that's the biggest thing for me is a lot of families are so caught up in the day to day of just managing their special needs children that they're not setting aside the time to plan. So I guess the biggest piece I would say is as soon as you have a child, get an insurance policy on them because you don't know what's going to happen in the future, what they're going to be diagnosed with. They may not be able to get coverage. That might be the only coverage you get for them. And planning ahead means your children are probably going to live about 20 years after you pass. You need 20 years worth of expenses of insurance money set aside. The goal is for them to be living off the interest of those proceeds of those whole life policies and never touch the principal face amount. That's the goal. So
Mm.
that that principal face amount is there for an emergency. A lot of people buy a house and they don't get mortgage protection, not thinking about if something happens to the primary breadwinner, how are you going to pay for the home?
Yeah. Yeah, it sounds like you're future-proofing them essentially. Like you're future-proofing the children of or the next generation, if you like. And that, because by the sounds of things, am I right in that it's, there's limited awareness around this type of insurance, especially needs, but there's not enough focus as well. Like, is that what you see as the biggest, I guess, conundrum challenge as well in terms of like there's just not enough awareness of you're almost in survival mode, right? By the sounds of things, you're operating in survival mode, you're just getting through the day to day, can't even look up. And so what you're doing is
Like,
you're shining a light to help them look up and future proof the next generation because everyone deserves to be everyone deserves a future.
exactly. When I had a event this last Saturday, Sweatpants and Mimosas, that it was an autism moms luncheon where the moms could get a break and just get out there
Sounds
and
like
just
fun.
be with other moms. It was a lot of fun. It was heartbreaking some of the stories that you heard too of what people were dealing with, where it wasn't their own children, it was their godchildren or their
Mm.
grandchildren that they're raising because their parents aren't able to. And them not even realizing that they could not get insurance on some of these children and informing them of that and informing them of how much insurance coverage they actually need to set aside for these kids. That I could just see the shocked expressions on everyone's face of, I did not even understand that or know that. And I'm like, please come talk to me. Even if you don't like me, get the information you need to go get what you need somewhere else, but at least get the information. That's the biggest thing is getting the information and the education out there. And when I meet with clients, I do it over Zoom, but I have different PowerPoint presentations to educate them because there's so many different types of insurance for life insurance itself. They need to understand what the different types of policies are because how are you going to decide what you want to make your portfolio up of if you don't even understand insurance itself?
Yeah, there's a lot to learn. There's a lot to learn. But it sounds like you're also a life, not only are you a lifelong learner, but you're teaching these people to be lifelong learners themselves. Like it's a constant learning, learning never goes away. Like I said, like your grandfather said to you, it's like you never stop learning until the day you die. And I truly believe that too. And again, in the world we're in, everything's changing so quickly. I've been talking a lot about AI and everything coming in with that as well. Like it's just this constant need to learn. But then there's the other flip side of it that is around. It's just like this cognitive overload, right? You talked earlier about, at 15 minutes of 8:45 every night, you have to just kind of meditate, or it's almost like for me, subtract from the day to prepare yourself for the next day. Do you also see that there's almost it's overwhelming? It's kind of like there's just too much information and there's a need to simplify it. Like, what's your thoughts on that?
Yes, there is. It can be very overwhelming, especially for my clients. They're coming from a place of they know they have a need, but they don't understand what the need exactly is. So it's educating them on the different types of coverage there are, that you need different coverages at different stages of your life, and then helping them put together a plan that is not only financially feasible for them, but something that they have a peace of mind going forward, knowing at least this part's taken care of. I know my wife's taken care of because I got a mortgage protection policy. Now next I need to worry about this. And a lot of people come to me, they think they have to buy everything all at once. And I'm like, no, 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 no. Don't overload yourself like that.
Yeah.
What's the most important thing? What's on your mind right now? What is the biggest fear that you have? Let's work on that first, and then let's get the other smaller pieces together as we go.
Like we could keep talking about there's so many things we could cover and I haven't even really looked at like your marketing side of things, but what you're doing, Shannon, is like I said, you're like a saint. Has anyone ever told you that you're like a saint, like Saint Shannon? Has anyone ever called you that?
I've been told I sometimes have the patience of a saint, but I don't feel that way.
So what would you say? What would be your biggest hope? What would you say be your biggest hope right now for everything you're doing, and it's in particular for from a missing pieces, children with special needs? What's your biggest hope for them for the future?
The biggest thing I would hope for is that some of these insurance companies realize that even if somebody is severely autistic, it doesn't mean they shouldn't be able to have a policy. They may have needs. Um, I think there's a lot of conditions that are considered uninsurable that I can understand from a risk management portion why they do that. But from a client portion, I don't understand it.
Mm,
I don't understand why I can't get a policy for my 8-year-old because he has special needs when I know that he would benefit from something like that.
mm,
Especially there's one type of policy in particular called an index universal life that's whole life and it earns a cash value, but it also has an investment portion that a lot of people use to build generational wealth that you can only get if you're very healthy. And
mm.
to me, that doesn't make sense because why is only the healthy people allowed to build generational wealth?
100%. 100%. So ultimately, you are really reshaping the future of, well, you're reshaping what insurance policies should and could look like for for the world, not just for, like you say, the wealthy people, but like for everybody. You're breaking down the biases of special needs or adults even with special needs. And it's not just even special needs, it's with people with, incurable diseases or injuries and things like that. So quite amazing what you're doing in terms of reshaping the future. Shannon, it's been I feel like I'm very privileged to be able to speak to you given how busy, and I hate using the word busy, so how productive, I'll say, how productive you are and how much you have on. How do we find out more about you and, if anyone wants to donate as well to the various organizations donating to, how do we find out more?
I'm sorry, that cut out at the very end.
Oh, I was going to say, how do we find out more about you? In terms of how do we find out more about what you're doing, and if we wanted to donate to one of your causes, how do we do that as well?
Okay. Well, the Play Place and Special Needs Center has a Facebook. So does a couple different animal rescues that we work with. I can't even remember the name. I feel really bad about that.
Okay.
But I would say if you aren't local and you want to donate, find a local animal shelter. That's the biggest thing you can do in your community. If you're going to get an animal, adopt, don't shop. The other thing I can say is, far as the special needs community goes, I know throughout Michigan and throughout the United States, there are certain facilities that cater to them, like We Rock the Spectrum, where it's a place that only special needs kids can go to and they can be themselves, and there aren't any stares, there aren't any whispers. They can just be who they are. Find one of those local places, donate to them. They're all nonprofits. Um, and that's something that they sponsor scholarships for kids who can't afford to come to the gym, that scholarship allows them to go to the gym and have that type of fun and feel free, carefree, just like any other child should be able to be.
Mm. Live their lives, let them just live their lives
Yes.
freely. Yeah, I love that. I love that. Well, Shannon, thank you so much. I'm like I said, I feel really privileged that I've had the chance to talk to you this morning, so early your time and evening for me. But yeah, thank you and have a wonderful day.
Thank you so much, Bea. I had a lovely time talking to you as well.
Yeah, me too. Thank you.